Lab. We have Kevin Jessup here as our presenter, and he's the CEO and Research Director of Evolve Research. And he's going to share some guerrilla tactics today on how we can use user experience on a budget.
That's right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello, everybody. I swear I'm not going to make any jokes about gorillas or anything, because we're going to keep it, you guys are all smart, so we're going to keep it legit and above board. So, yeah, today really is talking about usability, user experience, and how to test the user experience yourselves. So it's about shoestring budgets, it's about doing things very, very quickly, informally, in order to get the insight that you guys need to build better websites, mobile applications, mobile sites, whatever. So I'm going to kind of give you the guidelines on how to do that, what you need to do to prepare to test, and then I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can actually test for usability. So hopefully you're going to come away with some good stuff. But just a little bit about me. I am not a web designer in any way. I'm not a developer. I'm a nerd, yes, but those things, no. I'm a research guy. I'm a marketing research professional. So half of my business at Evolve is doing marketing stuff, anything to do with insights and research. We're looking at branding, advertising, that kind of thing. The other half of my business is all user experience. So testing mobile applications, software, websites, essentially seeing how people interact with it and then advising my clients, okay, this is what you need to do to fix your website, your app, to get people to use it. So essentially, what I do is I'm a guy who asks questions, makes observations, and kind of figures out people. That's what I do for a job. So we're talking about usability testing and the user experience. And I know you guys are smart, you guys are here because you know what all that is, but sometimes it's just good to clarify the difference between UX and usability. So usability is part of the user experience. The user experience is every time a user goes onto your website, it's kind of what they're thinking, feeling, what they're doing, how they perceive your brand, whether they're having a good experience or a bad experience. That's the user experience. Usability is specifically about the interaction between user and whatever's going on. So if you are having if your website or whatever is not usable, then you're going to be having a bad user experience. But that's just the difference between the two. UX is the whole thing, usability part of that. So today we're going to be talking about websites, mobile applications, that kind of thing. But usability doesn't just apply to websites or software. It also applies to every single thing that we as humans interact with. Look at that sad little boxer in the corner. He's wearing what's known as a halty because he drags his owner around. But that usability is a very important part of that, because how easy is it to get said halty on your dog? That is part of the user experience. Video games, very cool. There's usability in every single part of a video game console. You've got the actual, can I use this controller? Can my little fingers reach all these buttons? Can I use the operating system of the console? Can I use all of the apps that I can download? Can I use the video games, and how do they all interact with I keep doing that, that's weird. That's controller. How do I interact with controller? And then finally, usability can be things like instructions. So you know when you go to, I guess, you buy a flat pack piece of furniture online, for a bed, for example. It comes in, and often than not, you reach through the pieces, you get out the instruction manual. Sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be a little ambiguous. But you know, a bad user experience would be perhaps you're sweating and grunting and cussing for 2 hours, and at step 9, the final step, you realize that you've put a pivotal part of your bedding upside down thanks to the instructions not being clear at step 1. Bad user experience. But it's all usability, and that really did happen to me. So usability is about just that. It's about anticipating frustrations and doing everything that we can to get rid of them. So usability is super important on websites because, you know, there's lots of alternatives out there. If you're on Amazon.com and you can't find something, all you have to do is go to Walmart.com or Target.com, whatever you want to do. So if users can't do what they want to achieve, they're just going to go elsewhere. So it's really, really important that we get that user experience down. Okay, so how do you know if you need usability testing? Well, you might not need it. You just might make it part of your development, your build out. You might inherently put it in there. But there might be some telltale signs. Maybe you are getting lots of inbound calls about information that you think is on your website. Maybe you've got a problem with usability there. Perhaps folk are abandoning their shopping carts. Maybe, you know, your downloads, your mobile apps, you're getting poor reviews there. They're all like little telltale signs of bad usability. But whatever bad usability is, it can be summarized by your business objectives are not getting fulfilled in some way. So the first part of what you want to do before you start usability testing is actually you really need to figure out what are you trying to do, because usability can be applied to so much. Are you trying to figure out a potential navigation structure for your website? Are you actually trying to resolve a problem? Yeah, why are people going to my website? Why are they clicking here? But then when they get to this stage, why are they exiting my site? Or maybe you've just got a new design and you just want to know, is this going to help people out or is it going to make their life a bit of a nightmare? So, Guerrilla style. Now, this isn't a shameless plug about my firm, but this is just the one that I'm going to get in there. Because we're experts in usability, it means that we can do it very, very well. Probably better than you guys, because that's what we specialize in. But the thing is, if you hire a firm like me, these are all the stages that you've got to go through. And there's a lot of stages. It can take about a month to do, and it could cost you anywhere between 6 and 20 grand. And I know that a lot of guys like yourself don't actually have usability in your budgets. So that's why I'm here to give you some top tricks of what you can actually do. Because Guerrilla usability is all about doing it fast, it's about doing it informally, it's about cutting some corners, and it's quick and cheap. So, so this slide shouldn't be here, it's in the wrong place, but I'll explain it. Right now, mobile is so very important. When we started out usability testing, it would just be, you know, websites on computers. Now it's applications, it's mobile websites. Statistic there, if you think of leading websites like Amazon, Walmart, Target, these leading retail websites, 56% of their web traffic, not their mobile application traffic, but 56% of their web traffic is mobile. So what can we test with usability? We can test anything. We can test existing sites, we can test wireframes, designs, we can even test pictures, printouts, groupings of information, content. But the thing that we need to do when we're testing is we need to make the experience very visual, very visceral, so when we're testing it with our users, they're kind of giving us the most reliable data, because the more engaged they are with what we're doing, the better information you guys are going to get. So step one, this is where I'm actually telling you how to do stuff. Learn the basics. It sounds silly, but there are a couple of places you should go. Apple's Human Interface Guidelines, great usability examples there. Google's very own material design. You know, Google's had a problem over the last several years with their, operating system being so fragmented. With material design, they're attempting to bring it all together. But I think what's important about these documents, for example, material design will say, hey, when you're designing a mobile app on Android, you really should be using the Roboto typeface. It's not that they're telling you to use Roboto, it's the reasons why you should be using Roboto. It's very, very easy on the eye. It's got beautiful space in between letters. It means that users can comprehend and get less fatigued when reading it. So those two documents, super essential. Nielsen Norman Group website, you could spend days and days and days on there reading every article you like about usability. It's got lots of empirical, research-based evidence on what makes good usability, what makes poor usability. Smashing Magazine, good usability, it comes at it from a slightly different perspective. It comes at it a lot more from a design perspective, but very good. Of course, you've got your Apple News Flipboard aggregators, but if there is an app that you need to download today, it's one called MyBridge. I don't know, are you guys familiar with MyBridge? Okay, it's pretty new. MyBridge actually has a focus on usability, user psychology, user testing, and it's also a use aggregator, but it specializes in that kind of technological side of things. So everyone needs to download MyBridge for sure. Okay, so before we start in usability testing, you've got to, I know you guys are all digital marketers, you all know what's going on, but you've got to kind of breathe and accept that you don't know everything. You just got to go in with that mindset. When you're user testing, you've got to be prepared for criticism. People are going to criticize your product. That is especially hard if you've got designers and developers who made that and they're part of the testing experience. It can be very hard for them to hear the bad things about their site. User testing is all about common sense and letting prioritizing information. You can have a dozen people who say, I really don't like that graphic, that guy looks a bit weird, but is that actually, in the grand scheme of things, important to what you're doing? They can still purchase what they're there to purchase. So you need to be able to prioritize issues into kind of low priorities, critical priorities, that kind of thing. Okay, so we got some background information for you guys to do. Now you've got to pick the right test subjects. It sounds silly, but this is really, really important. Ideally, you want to test with actual users of your website, right? That's where you're going to get the most reliable data. But this is guerrilla testing, so we might have to test with our friends, our family, whoever we can, colleagues. But I would say if you're testing with friends and family, you want to try and get those guys as close to your target market as you can. If you're testing with your team, your colleagues, you definitely don't want to be testing with people who actually designed or developed the sites. It goes without saying. There are things that you can do to help you get the right test subjects in. We like to write screening criteria. So when you're recruiting someone, you might ask them a couple of qualifying questions just to see if they're the right folk to have in the mix. Often, if you're, retail site, you want to know how often someone shops online. If they never shop online or they rarely shop online, you probably don't want to be testing with those guys. So we've learned the hard way. You can ask a question when recruiting people. Hey, do you have the internet on your phone? How often do you use it? I use the internet on my phone all the time. They then get into testing and they've got a flipping flip phone. And that just throws everything, because they didn't lie. They do use the internet all the time on their flip phone. And it doesn't help you when you're testing a smartphone application. So screen for that. Any kind of expert developer, guys like yourselves who perhaps are super close to the content, you don't want that. And also people who are, this is pretty important, if you are testing a particular brand's website, you want to make sure you've got people who are not mad with that brand, because they're going to talk about their bad experience instead of the matters at hand. Okay, we've recruited, we've got everyone right. Okay, so let's actually start testing these things. So there are a zillion different things that you can do in user testing. It's a very flexible, adaptable way of researching. But I want to talk about three. The first one I want to talk about is prototyping. And that's where we can take any ideas that we have for a website or a mobile application, and we can test it. These ideas can be really loose. They can be really strong. We can actually test things that maybe are in development and work slightly. Maybe we're just testing cardboard cutouts, pieces of paper. So essentially all you need to do to mobile paper prototype, scissors, scalpel, that's not a scalpel, that's an X-Acto knife. That's cardstock, and that's a Galaxy Note 7, but it's cardboard, so it's not going to blow up or anything. But honestly, what you can do is you can start cutting things out, so you can cut the screen out, and you'll start actually putting like little not user generated, but hand sketched items in there. So I can sit Brian down in front of my cardboard cutout phone. Brian can be looking at all this stuff, and as I'll ask him to do a task, and Brian can actually start having to say, Brian, where would you go to log in? And Brian would look at my cardboard cutout and he'd click a little button. Then as a moderator, I'd have to go and get my replace it with a login screen, and then replace it with a keyboard. It sounds really cheap, but I did have a video to show you, but I don't now. But basically, as a moderator, if you're doing this paper prototyping, you need to know every single thing about the prototype, right? Because you've got to be prepared for Brian to click over here. You've got to know where that little icon is. You've got to know where that screenshot is. So you've got to know that thing like the back of your hand. Also, when you're paper prototyping, people are perhaps going to click with their finger on things that you weren't prepared for. So you've got to be prepared to get a pen and pad and sketch things out. But the good idea with paper prototyping is you can roll with it. You can do a lot of impromptu stuff. Okay. Second thing, card sorting. This is what I would think is the ultimate Guerrilla usability testing. It's going to cost you $2. You just need note cards. So what this technique is really about, it's about understanding how information is grouped together from a user's perspective. So what we like to use this for is understanding how we should build out a site's navigation. So what we can do is we essentially write all of our navigation items on individual note cards. You can print them out if you're fancy, or you can handwrite them. So these are going to be the potential menu items, the potential menu names, anything we think of. We shuffle these cards, and then what we do is we give them to 2 users. So 2 users is pretty important. So we ask the 2 users, hey, here are some cards. This represents the navigation structure of our website. What we want you to do is just start grouping them into things that are common, things that make sense. Now, the reason we do this with 2 people instead of 1 is because you get a lot of discussion between 2 people. You get a lot of interaction. Remember, we need to make this very, very interactive. What you'll find is people will just start discussing, hey, you put that over there. I think it should be over here. Because when I think of that, I'm thinking of paying my bill. I'm not thinking of viewing my bill. So you start to get some really nice subtleties in the data. You, as a moderator, you don't have to be quiet through this whole process. You can start asking questions. Hey, you guys, I see that you're having trouble finding a place for that. Why is that? Is it because it doesn't mean anything to you? Is it hard to understand? You can even do some really cool things like, out of all of these menu groupings, these items, underline anything that you think is ambiguous or duplicated or hard to understand. You can really kind of, again, make things up on the fly, but what you really want to do is understand exactly how these groupings are. So, this was another video that doesn't work. Just so you guys know, I want to show you something. I got asked, okay, the video doesn't work on our computer. Have you got your computer? And I said, yes. So I go and get my computer out of my bag. That's what I got. I got an empty computer case. So anyway, but these 2 people, they were doing a card sort exercise. But why I wanted to show you that was the whole fact that even from the beginning, I gave them 4 menu items. They actually even started reorganizing those menu items. Actually, I don't think About Us should be there. I'd put it over there. And then they had the cards and they started grouping it. But it's a very, very cool thing. Okay, so you will find after several sessions, you'll see that these card sorting exercises, there are things that are very similar. And then again, there's also those things that you can throw out that perhaps aren't similar. But it's a really, really, really powerful, and it's so quick to do as well. You can do that internally as well, perhaps with colleagues who are, and it takes 10 minutes. It's great. Okay, So the final thing are usability labs. So these ones are a little more prepared because this is where you're actually sitting someone down and you're getting them to interact with your website, your prototype, whatever. Now the reason this is a little harder is because you've got to do a lot of preparation on the back end. So the idea is you're sitting someone down in front of your website and you're going to give them tasks that represent things that you want to achieve as business goals. Maybe it's to find product X and go ahead and purchase it. But you've got to do a lot of thinking on the back end of exactly what you're testing because you only have about an hour to do this. So your main investment here is time. So yeah, we basically sit the user in front of a website and give them a scenario. You're shopping for a phone, you've ended up on the Verizon website, you know you want the new iPhone 7, but you're not sure of what data plan options you have. Go ahead and find them. And then you'll literally sit back and watch them do this. Ask them to provide a narrative. Hey, we just want to know your thoughts and your feelings, what you're thinking, so just let me know if anything's confusing, hard to find, let me know where you're going. One of the hard things about doing this kind of research is you kind of have to sit back and shut up. So sometimes there'll be a user and you can see that button that they're trying to click. It's obvious, but those guys are missing it. But you just gotta take a back seat and be quiet. But observing is very important because a lot of the time people can be using your website and you'll notice that they might be looking confused. Ask them, hey, Brian, I see that you're kind of scrunching up your nose. Is there something wrong? Are you expecting to see something else? Are they experimentally clicking? Are they kind of clicking back? You know, why are you doing that? So there are those things. But the challenge is it can be a little frustrating. And by all means, if these users are taking too long to do something, you can say, hey, I tell you what, I know you're not going to find it. We've actually put it over here. Why would you not? You know, why aren't you looking over there? Is it the color? Is it just the terminology that's throwing you? So again, asking questions on the fly. Oh, one good thing to do with this usability lab testing is conducting two at a time. Well, conducting two individual labs with a separate moderator, separate user, two separate rooms. Doing two at a time can be good because afterwards, again, you can bring both users together and you can discuss your experience. Hey, Brian, I know that when you were with me, you were having problems, you know, locating product X. Do you want to tell Dave about that? And then again, they'll start having a discussion and you can kind of jump in and you can get some really rich information about the user experience. Okay, so a few things to remember. When it comes to user testing, I'm sure one of the questions that you may have had is how many of these sessions do I need to do? There's no magic number. This is guerrilla testing. You do as many as you feel comfortable doing until you get the information you need. You might, for example, have set up 10 different sessions. After 5, you realize, hey, I know that this button is a problem, or I know people can't find that. You don't need to test another 5 knowing that situation's going to arise again. So you can just substitute that exercise for something else. It's all about how confident you feel with that information. We typically don't do any more than 10 different sessions. Typically after about 3, you'll start to see some very common themes that reoccur. You can do another 3 sessions just to verify that, and then you can start switching things out. So some tips, we've learned that using things like GoToMeeting, WebEx are awesome for usability testing. Not only can you test remotely, I mean, I could test with Brian if he's in a different office. I can see his screen. We can still have conversations. But it's also good if you've got a team of developers or your marketing team. They can observe the session remotely. They can all be in a separate office, coming up with ideas. Perhaps, you know, they can be sending me texts. Hey, I noticed this guy said this about here. What if we changed it to green? So you can get that interaction with your own internal teams. And again, that's using something like WebEx or GoToMeeting. Mobile testing, QuickTime, paired with your iPhone or iPad is actually really cool. I see a few of you nodding. You can plug in your iPhone to your computer. All of a sudden, your iPhone screen is on your laptop. Again, using WebEx, you can beam that somewhere else. But essentially, people can easily observe what someone is doing, the user's doing on their phone. So, finally, I think usability is all about common sense. It's not a dark art. If there are things you want to know, ask your users, but just do it in a way that's kind of conversational, that's not interfering with their experience. Again, being patient it can be tricky sometimes. The closer your test subjects are to your real life users, the more reliable your data is going to be. The more conversation and kind of light-heartedness nature of these groups, sessions, labs, prototyping, you're going to get better information that way too. Make sure everything you're testing is in line with what you actually need to be testing. There's often times when you need to get rid of the nice to know to make way for the need to know. And the final thing is apply a filter. I know I said earlier you've got to kind of put yourself in a space where you've got to convince yourself you don't know everything. Well, you're still really smart. When users give opinions about especially design elements, I don't like this color, purple, ooh. You don't need to be paying attention to stuff like that. When it comes to specific design elements, users can be a little iffy. Is that a word? But I mean, things like, hey, this font's too small, I can't read it. Yeah, okay, that's great, that's good information. Hey, the color of this chart is purple, that's gross. I don't know if that's good information. But anyway, that was that in 35 minutes. So there was a lot of information there. What questions do you guys have? Yes, ma'am.
In your experience, have you found demographics when you're getting your accurate target market to affect anything? Like, for example, I would expect maybe older users might have more trouble, or?
No, I think, again, it is, if an older user is in your target market, then yeah, you need to test it with them. While they may be less familiar with the web, conventions, mobile, they're still your target market, so you still need to test it with them, because ideally you want to make it as easy for an older user as a younger user and find that commonality between the two. But you'll be amazed. We get a lot of older folk in our testing sessions and they have no problem. It's kind of second nature. Yeah. But I will say, yeah, we had screening questions. You probably don't want to do testing with people who are unfamiliar with compute, because you're just going to waste your time. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If you're doing, say, maybe looking at an older site that's already live and you've got really good, say, event tracking through Google Analytics, even though you're not able to look at like the users, what would you recommend as far as like a sample size if you were going to use some of those insights to maybe see where people are falling off?
You know, again, because this is kind of Guerrilla and time is money, I would say stick to a maximum of 10 just to start off with, because even though this isn't like quantitative data, we're just looking for indications of why people are having problems, and you'll be surprised how quickly those indications come out. So yeah, usually after 3 sessions, 4 sessions, you'll start thinking, okay, I got a feeling that this is a problem area. Use another few sessions to verify that. And again, because it's Guerrilla style, you can kind of switch it up, ask whatever questions. Okay, I know we noticed this is a problem. What if we did this? Would that make it any easier? So yeah, I don't think you need to do any more than 10. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Have you had an experience where the preferences of 2 different groups were mutually exclusive to some degree, and you had a decision-making process there? Was there a third option you decided to go with? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so yeah, you do sometimes have these conflicts. Like you'll do some groups and it's like, okay, this is what's going on. And then you'll do another few groups and it's like, dang it, now I don't know, because they're the exact opposite. So you have to really apply a bit of common sense. I think that's where your skills, when it comes to questions, why are the reasons, is it a demographic thing? Is it these are a group of millennials who are on their phones all the time versus these are a group of, folk who just aren't. So that's when you kind of need to start analyzing the data. And again, if you have these conflicts that are coming up, my suggestion would be just do some more. Because eventually you're probably going to reach a point where you're very confident about the reasons for those differences. But it's really important just to get those down. I know it sounds vague, but it does happen. Yeah. David, go on.
Thank you.
Hello.
Great accent, by the way.
Thank you. Likewise.
I have a question. Do you have some examples of times when UX has delivered results for folks, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the best time UX delivers results is when you do UX prior to going live, especially if you've got a big project, because it's kind of daunting going live with a brand new website, especially if that website is there to achieve business goals, like, we're going to sign up for a service, we're going to buy something. You've got to make sure that that process is down, otherwise you ain't selling stuff. So yeah, the best way that we've done that is actually kind of stitching several of these things together. You go from the card, the groupings of information, then you move to your kind of paper prototyping, and your paper prototypes can actually be on the computer. They can be static images that perhaps link to other pages that kind of emulate the experience. So it's really a process of doing the kind of sorting, the prototyping, and from the prototypes you can get real good guidelines of this is what your live website should do, and then you can start testing sections of that build out as you go along. But it really is, the most successful is when you go from start to finish and see it all the way through. But that does take a long time because it's chunked out. Does that answer your question? Cool. Yes, sir.
Sorry, one more.
No, you're good.
You talk about the kind of the piggyback on the two different groups that are mutually exclusive. If you were doing testing and you had maybe a revision that you did to that, would you recommend calling in those same people or getting?
No, because the trouble is once you call in those same people, they're already experienced. They've already got like preconceptions about what's being tested. So no, I would just do it with fresh faces. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any rules that, in your experience, you've seen are like must-dos or must-don't-dos for design in terms of what users generally find more easy to use?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. I think now with mobile being so prevalent, there's definitely a need for brevity. There's definitely a need, and we're, especially now, kind of mobile design has shifted a lot towards a more minimal experience. It doesn't have to be boring. You can have a beautiful minimal experience, but on mobile, I think ease of completion and speed is so much more important. So it's making sure your volume of information isn't much. It's making sure that your font spacing is adequate, that allows a user to look at something and quickly get it. I mean, one of the things that we always see is click here for more information. Well, that's a little junky. What you really should do is have the action, facts, car facts should be the link as opposed to click here for car facts. Just making things brief and to the point and just on. I mean, if I could sum it all up, that's what it would be. Yes, ma'am.
Question. When a client hires your services to do testing on their website, are you testing what they're specifically asking for goals, or are you just doing a run through of their website? Like, we're noticing this many people aren't signing up on our form, or is it?
No, it depends on the individual client. Some clients will come to us and say, yeah, we've got a problem, people aren't following through on their purchases. And then we will go back and design a methodology and experience that's going to help us get to the bottom of that. Other people are very, very, they know about usability. They may just say, hey, we think we've built out a really good website, but we just want to test it. We want to make sure. So we'll go back and we'll design a session that kind of tests as much of that website as we can. And again, we kind of will translate that to real life scenarios. Hey, you can't find product X and you need to contact this company. How would you go about doing that? So we kind of try, and it just depends for each client. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you ever maybe record these sessions and then go back and
Yes.
what kind of things do you look for? Like I figured one might be like if someone looks closer, maybe a bigger font.
Mhm.
Is there things like that you look for?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yes, we record all of our sessions, and yes, we go back and kind of rewatch the videos. So yeah, you want to. One of the things that we do have some specialist recording software, but one of the advantages of that, not only does it record the screen, it records the respondent's face as well. So you can go back and you can kind of identify when they're kind of just eyes are darting around, reading everywhere. It's kind of like a real cheap eye tracking way of doing it. Yeah, but just those visual cues, the looking confused, the looking close at the screen, the just kind of reading through everything, because ideally you don't want someone to have to read through everything to get the info that they want. That's not the point. So just, yeah, visual cues like that are really important. Yeah.
In your software, are you able to do a split screen to see what they were doing when they got these visual cues?
Yeah, so it's like a picture-in-picture thing. So like when you use, it's kind of like when you use FaceTime and you can kind of see your little face in the corner. Yeah, your little face. Anything else, you guys?
Thank you so
Cool.
much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.